The scent of fresh jasmine floated through the golden hallways of the Hotel Baobab in Dakar, where the most powerful men in Africa had gathered for what the West called the Partnership Summit. For President Ibrahim Traoré, it felt like a chessboard disguised as a dinner party. He stood near the balcony, sipping black coffee, his eyes drifting between silk suits and polished speeches. French, English, Wolof and Arabic danced through the air. None of it sounded honest. President Traoré, a voice interrupted. He turned. Standing before him was James Ellison, special envoy of the European Economic Coalition, trim gray beard, blue eyes like a winter sky. The man moved with the confidence of someone who had never had to say, "No, I was hoping we could speak in private," Ellison said, motioning to a side lounge. Ibrahim nodded without expression and followed. The room was quiet, with thick curtains and low lighting. No cameras, no translators, just power and pretense. Ellison got right to it. "We're offering $2.7 billion in infrastructure grants and long-term defense support," he said, sliding a sealed envelope onto the glass table. "All you need to do is sign off on uranium access in Zone 9 and fast-track our investment framework." Ibrahim didn't flinch. In exchange for, Ellison leaned forward. "Security, stability, legitimacy. You'll be seen as a global partner, not an outsider." Ibrahim stared at him for a moment, then smiled faintly. "So I get to keep my chair, as long as I let you dig up the floor beneath it." Ellison chuckled softly, like a man who thought resistance was theater. "We're not trying to take your land, Mr. President. Just unlock its value." Ibrahim stood slowly. "I'll consider it, tomorrow." Ellison nodded, satisfied. "Of course, but you should know. Some of your neighbors have already agreed." As Ibrahim exited, his phone buzzed. Encrypted message from Minister Diarra. "We need to talk. The deal is being signed behind your back." In his hotel suite that night, Ibrahim removed his jacket and stared at the city lights outside the window. Dakar was alive. Horns, music, struggle, hope. And behind the walls of the summit, the future of Africa was being sold by the ounce. He dialed a secure line. "Bring me the files on Zone 9. Tonight," his aide hesitated. "Sir, they're classified under Joint Command." "I wasn't asking," Ibrahim replied. At 2:11 a.m., the documents arrived in a slim metal case, carried by a young intelligence officer who looked terrified just to be in the room. Ibrahim flipped through the data. Zone 9 had enough uranium to power Western Europe for 14 years. Its estimated value exceeded $400 billion, and buried deep in the fine print, exclusive rights transfers to a Luxembourg-based firm with ties to the EEC. Signed already, not by him, by someone else, someone in his cabinet.
He clenched his jaw.
It wasn't just a betrayal, it was theft, a tap on the door. It was his security chief, Captain Euro. "Sir, the French delegation is meeting with Minister Tano in room 514. Closed doors, no records." Ibrahim stood. "Then let's make our own." 2 floors above, Ibrahim watched through a silent camera feed. He saw Minister Tano, one of his oldest allies, sitting with 2 French envoys and a lobbyist with a Parisian accent. Tano was laughing, signing, smiling, selling. The next morning, headlines across African media praised the summit's historic cooperation. Photos of smiling presidents, shaking hands, flags, deals, unity. Ibrahim said nothing, but he had already drafted his speech, not for the media, not for the diplomats, for the battlefield of words inside the summit chamber. By the time the summit entered day 2, the halls of Hotel Bob buzzed with polite deceit. Western media called it the dawn of a new economic era for Africa. Behind closed doors, leaders who once spoke of sovereignty now whispered about interest rates and exit clauses. President Ibrahim Traoré walked into the main hall 10 minutes early. His stride was calm, but his silence weighed like a loaded weapon. He wore no tie, no security entourage, just a crisp white shirt, a worn leather watch, and that unmistakable look. Part warrior, part historian, the hall filled quickly. Dozens of heads of state, diplomats, and energy CEOs took their seats beneath golden chandeliers. Massive flags of African nations hung behind the stage. The room was theater. Every move, an act. Every deal, a script. Ibrahim stood when his name was called. He approached the podium with slow confidence. When he looked up, the room fell quiet. He didn't glance at his notes. He didn't need them. Brothers, sisters, partners, he began. This summit was meant to shape Africa's tomorrow. But as I listened yesterday, I heard echoes of our past. He let the words settle. People speaking about investment, while drawing maps in private about partnership, while writing contracts that steal before they share. A few heads turned, some stiffened. We are told to sign, quietly, gratefully, to trade our uranium for stability, our water for support, and our dignity for applause. Ellison, seated in the second row, folded his hands and stared straight ahead. But I did not come to Dakar to be patted on the head. Traore continued, I came because my people deserve to be seen, heard, respected. He raised the envelope Ellison had given him. This offer is not partnership. It is blackmail with a French accent, a sharp intake of breath. Several aides looked around nervously. But we are not desperate, he said, voice rising. We are not poor. We are rich in land, rich in people, and rich in the one thing that terrifies you the most, independent thinking. Silence, then murmurs, then something unexpected. Applause, soft at first, then louder, not from Ellison, not from the western side of the room, from other African leaders, from the youth representatives, from his own people. After the speech, Ibrahim didn't return to his suite. He went to the back garden of the hotel, where palm trees swayed against the Atlantic breeze. Captain Euro met him there, eyes sharp. They're panicking, he said. EEC called an emergency meeting with Ellison. And you should hear this, Russia wants a call. I'm not here to be traded like a chess piece between empires, Ibrahim said. Neither west nor east. We decide, on our own. But they'll push back. They already have, Ibrahim replied. But we just made them blink. Upstairs, chaos brewed. Ellison paced the floor of a private suite, phone pressed to his ear. He went off script, he growled. Humiliated us on live stream. A British envoy spoke calmly over the speakerphone. Do we apply financial pressure? Freeze accounts? No, Ellison said. Not yet. A pause. There's a better way. Leverage someone inside. That night, in a secured room with no cameras, Ibrahim met quietly with 3 African presidents from Mali, Guinea, and Niger. None of them had spoken openly during the summit, until now. You said what we've all wanted to say, President Doumbia of Guinea admitted. We're tired of the West treating us like spoiled children, said General Sadogo of Niger. But Mali's President Samake warned, they will retaliate, economically, politically, or worse. Ibrahim nodded. Then we stand together, or we stand alone, one by one. He leaned forward. What if we built our own continental resource block, African-controlled, transparent, accountable, not for sale? The idea hung in the air like dry thunder. Doumbia spoke first. It will start a war. No, Ibrahim said. It will end one. But even as those words echoed with hope, a shadow moved elsewhere. Minister Tano, the one Ibrahim had watched signing behind his back, sat in a dim bar in another hotel. He was sweating. Across from him sat a man in a tailored blue suit, sipping whiskey. You'll be well compensated, the man said. You just have to keep feeding us what he's planning. Speeches, strategy, allies. Tano hesitated. He's my president. The man smirked. He's also a threat to the order we built. Help us keep the peace. Outside, thunder rumbled over Dakar. Inside, the game was just beginning. It was 4:16 a.m. when the message came through. Encrypted, anonymous. 2 lines only. Room 9D. Tano is compromised. Audio proof attached. President Ibrahim Traoré didn't sleep much during summits, but tonight he was already awake. He stared at the message for a long second, then turned to Captain Euro, who stood by the window scanning the empty streets below. Wake up our tech team, Ibrahim ordered. I want that audio decrypted and analyzed before sunrise. Euro nodded and disappeared into the hallway like smoke. Within an hour, the file was playing in Ibrahim's ear. The voice was unmistakable. Minister Tano, the man who had sat at Ibrahim's table for a decade, who had cried at his inauguration, who had sworn to defend the nation with his last breath. Now he was whispering terms to a foreign diplomat, offering strategic access to state communications, asking for protection once Traore falls. Ibrahim said nothing. He just closed his eyes and made a decision. By 6 a.m., a quiet storm moved through Hotel Baba. Tano's key card stopped working. His phone was disabled. His guards were replaced, and he never saw the 4 plainclothes agents enter his room. He was escorted silently through the service elevators to a private suite on the 21st floor, converted overnight into an interrogation room. No press, no scandal. Not yet. Ibrahim entered alone. Tano was already sweating. His tie was off, collar unbuttoned. "I thought we were friends," Tano said quietly. "We were," Ibrahim replied. "But friends don't sell your country for Swiss bank accounts. You don't understand the pressure." "I understand perfectly. That's why I didn't have you arrested." Tano looked up, confused. "What?" "I'm giving you a role to play," Ibrahim said, leaning in. "You're going to become our biggest asset." "How?" "You're going to keep feeding them. But this time, with what we want them to hear." Tano stared at him like a drowning man staring at the ocean. "And when this is over," he asked, "you'll do one final thing," Ibrahim said. "What?" Ibrahim didn't answer, but Tano knew. Later that morning, the summit resumed. On the surface, it was business as usual. Handshakes, keynote addresses, cameras flashing. But below the surface, the alliances were shifting. Ibrahim had breakfast with President Samake of Mali and an economic strategist from Kenya. He laid out the blueprint: Ibrahim Pan-African Mineral Sovereignty Pact, shared resource data among member states, national ownership, joint enforcement, no foreign majority stakes. "No one touches anything without all of us agreeing," Ibrahim explained. "We set the rules, not Brussels, not Beijing." Samake rubbed his chin. "They'll call it protectionism. They already call us unstable," Ibrahim replied. "Let them call us united for once." Meanwhile, inside a suite guarded by European security, James Ellison was not smiling. He was listening to a briefing from his aide. Details of Ibrahim's proposed pact, word for word. Tano was feeding them exactly what they expected, except it was bait. "That man is dangerous," Ellison muttered. "He's rallying others. He's making resistance fashionable." The aide hesitated. "There's another option." "What is it?" "A vote." Ellison looked up. "We push for a summit resolution that limits any bloc formation without full international oversight. If it passes, Traore's plan dies." Ellison stood. "Schedule it." That afternoon, a surprise item was added to the summit's agenda. Resolution 47A, on the coordination and oversight of multinational resource pacts. Ibrahim recognized it instantly. For what it was, a trap dressed in legalese. If passed, it would force African nations to seek international approval before creating economic blocs involving strategic minerals. It was colonialism in a suit and tie, and the vote was set for the next morning. Ibrahim gathered his inner circle in the hotel's old conference room. Walls faded, one AC unit barely humming. It was perfect. "This is it," he said. "They want to end the idea before it takes root." Samake was already on the phone with his vice president. DOMITA was reviewing legal clauses. Amina, a young analyst from Ghana, was tracking undecided nations. "We can flip them," she said, "but they'll need more than ideals." "What do you suggest?" Ibrahim asked. She pointed to her screen. Proof. At midnight, a single flash drive changed hands. Inside recordings, emails and payment trails, showing how foreign lobbyists had influenced the writing of Resolution 47A. Long before the summit even began, they'd planned to stop African sovereignty before it even had a name. The next morning, Ibrahim didn't speak first. President Samake did. He stood before the assembly, voice clear and defiant. "This resolution was not born in this room," he said. "It was conceived in boardrooms thousands of miles away." Gasps, whispers, and then came the data, displayed on the summit's central screen. Timestamps, wire transfers, confidential memos, all leading back to 2 European consulting firms. The chamber exploded. Some delegates shouted, others walked out. The vote canceled. Back in the shadows, Minister Tano sat alone. He watched the broadcast on a private feed, a guard standing behind him. He knew what came next, and he was ready. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a pre-written confession, signed, time-stamped, detailed. Then he whispered to the guard, "Give this to him." "What about you?" Tano looked at the skyline and said nothing. At dawn, the air in Dakar felt heavy, not just with heat, but with history. President Ibrahim Traoré sat alone in the summit's private garden, reading Minister Tano's handwritten confession. It was written in shaky but deliberate strokes, every word dripped with guilt and something more dangerous, regret. In it, Tano detailed every meeting, every wire transfer, every document he had leaked. But the final paragraph caught Ibrahim's eye. "I betrayed you because I thought survival meant obedience. But now I see, true survival is the courage to choose differently. I hope my death buys back what I sold." The guard who delivered the letter hadn't said it, but Ibrahim already knew. Tano was gone. He had taken his own life. Ibrahim folded the note, pressing his fingers against it, not to hide pain but to absorb it. Back inside the summit, the mood had shifted. Delegates who had once smiled through polished speeches now walked the halls in guarded silence. Allies whispered in corners. Journalists hunted for sound bites. But the West wasn't finished. That afternoon, James Ellison emerged for the first time in 2 days, flanked by aides. He approached the press with cold precision. "The accusations are unfounded," he declared. "The resolution was in good faith. President Traoré is turning the summit into a conspiracy circus." He adjusted his tie and smiled for the cameras. "Burkina Faso will face consequences." Ibrahim watched the statement from his suite. He didn't react. Not to the insult, not to the threat. Instead, he turned to Amina, the young analyst who had helped crack the lobbyist documents. "Do we have their full digital footprint?" She nodded. "Everything they've been doing for the last 6 months." He paused. "It's time we show the people who's really orchestrating the puppet show." That night, in a media room 3 floors below the summit ballroom, Ibrahim went live. No press, no moderation. Just a broadcast, raw, unfiltered, to Africa and beyond. He stared into the lens. "You were never meant to see what I'm about to show you," he began. His tone was calm, but the weight in his voice struck deep. He laid out the evidence. Wire transfers to ministers across the continent, leaked memos from consultants, whose real job was coercion, audio of Ellison discussing post-summit asset control. The footage played like a thriller, except it was real, and it was damning. Ibrahim ended the speech with a single sentence. "Africa has been negotiated without Africans long enough. That ends now." By morning, Twitter was on fire. So was the summit. Protests broke out outside the hotel. Young people waved flags, chanting "Africa First" in 5 languages. Inside, half the attending presidents refused to return to their seats. 4 governments withdrew from all EEC resource negotiations. A few Western delegates caught emergency flights out. Ibrahim stood calmly by the window as chaos brewed around him. Yarrow approached. "They're requesting a closed-door emergency session. Just the core members. No media." "Let them have it," Ibrahim said. "But I won't be attending." Yarrow blinked. "Sir, let them talk about Africa without me. That's what they do best." But while the summit unraveled, real danger grew elsewhere. In a hidden security room below the hotel, a French contractor, working off books, received an encrypted call. "The asset failed," the voice said. "We proceed to secondary containment." "What does that mean?" the contractor asked. "Traore doesn't leave Dakar." The order was clear. Assassination. At 6:42 p.m., the presidential convoy prepared to depart. 3 black SUVs waited in the underground garage. Ibrahim was set to return to the embassy compound before flying home. But something was off. Yarrow noticed it first. 2 guards were unfamiliar. The route had been altered. Radio chatter was wrong. He pulled Ibrahim aside. We've been compromised. How bad? Yarrow didn't answer. That was bad enough. 10 minutes later, they exited through the kitchen instead of the main garage. Dressed in civilian clothes, Ibrahim walked fast between walls lined with pots and shouting chefs, through a side exit, into an unmarked car with a local driver and 2 of his own snipers in streetwear. They didn't use radios, no GPS, just instinct and backup plans. Across town, a convoy of 3 black SUVs left the hotel at the scheduled time. At 7:02 p.m., the 3rd vehicle exploded in a fireball beneath an overpass. The press reported it as an engine malfunction, but intelligence agencies knew better. Ibrahim remained silent. No press statement, no photo op. He didn't need to confirm anything. The silence said it all. Later that night, the summit officially collapsed. No final photo, no signed declaration, no joint statement, just silence, smoke, and suspicion. But in the ashes of it all, something had already begun. 5 nations agreed to meet privately within the next month. Not in Brussels, not in Washington, but in Ouagadougou, Burkina Faso, a new beginning. The plane touched down in Ouagadougou just after 3 a.m. No red carpet.
Nice.
No anthem, no celebration. President Ibrahim Traoré stepped off the aircraft alone, the wheels of the presidential jet still hissing behind him. Captain Yarrow walked beside him in silence. The city slept, unaware of what their leader had survived or stopped from happening. And that was fine with him. He hadn't flown home in victory. He'd flown home with a mission. By sunrise, a private meeting was already underway at the presidential compound. Not a summit, not a press event, a war room. 6 African leaders sat around a circular table. No hierarchy, no throne. Mali,
Guinea,
Niger, Chad, Ghana, Burkina Faso. Some arrived in plain shirts, others came alone without aides. There were no ceremonial speeches, no champagne, just data, maps, blueprints, and the truth. Gentlemen, Ibrahim said,
what happened in Dakar wasn't a single event.
it was a stress test, a pressure campaign, a final attempt to push us back into dependence. President Doumbia nodded, and we passed. Barely, added General Sawadago. Had the evidence not leaked, it leaked because it had to, Ibrahim replied. This was never about one document or one vote. This is about the idea that we do not belong at our own table. He tapped the desk once. They're going to regroup. New methods, new messengers. President Samake from Mali leaned forward. Then let's stop waiting for them to invite us. Let's build the house ourselves. And so they did. What began as a single counter-proposal in Dakar became the Ouagadougou Doctrine, a foundational charter built on 3 simple pillars. 1. Resource sovereignty. No mineral, oil, or land may be exploited without public disclosure and majority national ownership. 2. Continental arbitration. Disputes between African nations to be settled by African legal councils, not foreign courts. 3. Collective defense of political autonomy. Any external attempt to coerce or destabilize a member state is considered an attack on all. It wasn't a policy, it was a declaration of independence, version 2.0. But while political papers moved in secure folders and encrypted channels, the world outside was catching fire. Western headlines accused Traore of destabilizing Africa. They called him erratic, a radical, a populist with dangerous ideas. Traore's doctrine threatens regional investment, read one Wall Street Journal editorial. New axis forming in West Africa, claimed another. They weren't wrong, but they weren't right either. Because while stock markets speculated, something else was rising: hope. In marketplaces from Bobo Dioulasso to Bamako, graffiti started appearing on old walls. We speak for ourselves. No more quiet colonies. Ouagadougou's, our Geneva. 3 weeks later, Ibrahim walked into a press room packed with local and international media. He wore no uniform, just a dark blue shirt and his signature red beret. He looked tired, but not weak. The microphones flickered to life. I know what they're saying, he began. That I'm radical, dangerous, that I say no too often. He looked into the cameras. I say no to the men who sell my land with a handshake and a smile. I say no to the hand that offers gold, only to take my water. I say no to the lie that we are poor, because poverty is not the absence of money. It is the presence of theft. Cameras clicked like machine guns. But I also say yes. He paused. Yes to building our own pipelines, even if they take 10 times longer. Yes to African students writing the laws that govern African soil. Yes to speaking in our own languages and making our own mistakes and standing on our own legs, even when they tremble. The room erupted in applause, but he wasn't finished. And if that makes me dangerous, then I am proud to be dangerous. Later that evening, Ibrahim returned to the street corner where he had once stood as a soldier, watching a protest he could not join. Now children ran past him without knowing who he was, and he liked it that way. He sat on a bench, watched the market close, listened to the sound of people bargaining, breathing, surviving. Captain Yero sat beside him. No security detail, Yero asked. No need, Ibrahim replied. The people are awake now. Yero hesitated. And what happens when they try again? Ibrahim looked out at the last light on the horizon. Then we remind them. Of what? He turned. That Africa is not a corner to be bargained for. It's a continent that remembers. In a boardroom in Paris, a former ambassador read the morning briefing. The final line made him frown. Ouagadougou is no longer responding to pressure. Aki dropped the report on the desk. This changes everything, he said. No one responded, because in some places, silence isn't defeat, it's defiance.